How did a company that most people once associated only with video game graphics quietly become more valuable than Apple, more valuable than Amazon, more valuable than almost every company that has ever existed? How did governments negotiate for its products the way nations once negotiated for oil? How did billionaires, presidents, and the biggest tech companies on Earth end up begging for access to the same machine? And how did one man spend nearly 3 decades preparing for a revolution that almost nobody else saw coming? This is the story of NVIDIA, and it starts not with triumph, but with rejection. In 1993, a 30-year-old engineer named Jensen Huang sat inside a Denny's diner in San Jose with 2 co-founders, sketching plans for a company on a paper napkin. None of them had money. None of them had a guaranteed customer. What they had was a stubborn belief that computer graphics were about to matter more than anyone realized. At the time, the world didn't need what they were selling. Personal computers were built to calculate, not to render worlds. Huang bet everything on a strange idea. That visual computing, the kind used to draw explosions in video games, would eventually become essential to nearly every industry on the planet. Investors were skeptical. The market for what NVIDIA made barely existed yet. For years, survival alone was the achievement. The company nearly went bankrupt more than once. Competitors came and went, but Huang kept pushing his engineers toward one relentless target: the graphics processing unit, or GPU, a chip built to do thousands of simple calculations at the exact same moment, rather than one complicated calculation at a time. Nobody, including Huang's own investors, understood that this design choice would one day reshape the entire tech industry. By the early 2000s, NVIDIA had become the company gamers trusted. Sharper explosions, smoother frame rates, more realistic worlds. It was a real business, a respectable business. But respectable wasn't what Huang was chasing. In 2006, he made a decision that puzzled Wall Street. NVIDIA released something called CUDA, a software platform that let regular programmers use gaming chips for something completely unrelated to gaming: general-purpose computing. Scientists could now run massive calculations, the kind used in physics simulations or weather modeling, on hardware built for rendering dragons and explosions. Investors were furious. CUDA cost hundreds of millions of dollars to develop, and for years it generated almost no revenue. Analysts openly questioned why a gaming company was pouring fortunes into a tool that gamers didn't even use. Huang's answer was almost eerie in hindsight. He said the world would eventually need massive parallel computing power for a purpose nobody had even invented yet. He didn't know it would be artificial intelligence. Nobody did. But he built the tool anyway and waited. That patience became the single most important decision in the company's history. Deep learning researchers, working in obscurity through the 2000s and early 2010s, discovered something remarkable. Neural networks, the mathematical structures behind modern AI, didn't run well on traditional processors. They needed millions of small calculations happening simultaneously. And that was exactly what NVIDIA's gaming chips, powered by CUDA, had been quietly built to do for almost a decade. In 2012, a breakthrough AI system called AlexNet stunned the research world by using NVIDIA GPUs to blow past every previous image recognition record. It wasn't marketed. It wasn't planned as a grand unveiling. But inside research labs, word spread fast. NVIDIA hardware was the secret weapon for building smarter machines. For years, this remained a story known mostly to scientists and engineers. The wider world had no idea the foundation for an AI revolution was already sitting inside gaming PCs. Then came November 2022. OpenAI released ChatGPT, and within days, it became one of the fastest-growing products in the history of technology. Suddenly, every company on Earth wanted an AI model of its own. Microsoft raced to integrate AI into its products. Google declared a company-wide code red. Meta, Amazon, and a wave of startups poured billions into building their own systems. And every single one of them needed the same thing to train these massive AI models, enormous fleets of GPUs. This wasn't a small purchase. Training a single large language model could require thousands of chips running continuously for weeks, drawing enormous amounts of power and costing hundreds of millions of dollars. It was an arms race, except the weapons weren't missiles or tanks. They were silicon. And there was really only one company capable of supplying them at the scale everyone suddenly needed. NVIDIA wasn't chasing this moment. It had been building toward it, largely unnoticed, for almost 20 years. Here's why that mattered so much. Training an AI model is a bit like trying to solve millions of tiny math problems at once, rather than one giant problem step by step. A traditional computer processor, a CPU, is like a brilliant single worker, incredibly smart, but working alone. A GPU is like an army of thousands of workers, each less powerful individually, but capable of tackling enormous problems together, all at the same time. Modern AI simply cannot be trained efficiently without that kind of massive, coordinated teamwork. That single architectural advantage, chosen decades earlier for rendering video game graphics, turned out to be exactly what the AI industry desperately needed. And NVIDIA didn't just sell chips, it sold an entire ecosystem. CUDA had spent nearly 20 years becoming the language that AI researchers were trained on, the toolkit their software was built around. Switching to a competitor wasn't as simple as buying a different processor. It meant rebuilding software, retraining engineers, and risking years of lost progress. That software moat became almost as valuable as the hardware itself. What followed was staggering. Demand for NVIDIA's most advanced chips outpaced supply so dramatically that companies were reportedly waiting months, sometimes over a year, just to get their orders fulfilled. Cloud giants, governments, and AI startups were effectively standing in line for silicon. Profit margins soared as customers paid a premium simply to guarantee access. By 2024, NVIDIA had joined the exclusive club of companies worth more than $1 trillion. And soon after, it stood among the most valuable companies the world has ever seen, at times surpassing Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon entirely. The company that once begged investors for survival money was now generating more profit in a single quarter than most corporations make in years. Think about that shift for a moment. A company that spent its first decade fighting simply to stay alive was now so central to the global economy that its quarterly earnings reports could move entire stock markets up or down within minutes. Data center revenue, once a small side business compared to gaming, exploded into the company's primary source of income, dwarfing everything else combined. Gaming, the very industry that built NVIDIA, had become almost a footnote next to the AI infrastructure business it had accidentally created decades earlier. But the deeper secret behind NVIDIA's dominance wasn't just the chips. It was timing, discipline, and an almost stubborn refusal to abandon a long-term bet during years when it looked foolish. While competitors chased whatever was profitable that quarter, NVIDIA spent nearly 2 decades quietly building the tools that would power a future nobody could clearly see yet. Jensen Huang became known for an unusual leadership style, flattening the organization, keeping himself close to engineering decisions, and pushing relentless innovation even when the company was already winning. Every year, NVIDIA released faster architectures. Faster chips meant AI companies could train smarter models sooner, which meant those companies stayed loyal to NVIDIA rather than risk switching to something unproven. It became a cycle that fed itself. The more the AI industry grew, the more indispensable NVIDIA became. Still, no empire is without threats. Competitors like AMD and Intel are racing to build rival chips. Tech giants including Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are developing their own custom AI processors, hoping to reduce their dependence on NVIDIA altogether. Export restrictions tied to China have complicated NVIDIA's access to one of the world's largest markets, forcing the company to navigate an increasingly tense geopolitical landscape. And some analysts question whether the extraordinary pace of AI spending can continue forever, or whether the industry is inflating expectations faster than reality can deliver. NVIDIA's dominance is real, but it isn't guaranteed to last forever. History is filled with companies that looked unstoppable until the ground shifted beneath them. Kodak once owned photography. Nokia once owned mobile phones. Being essential today has never been the same thing as being essential tomorrow, and NVIDIA's leadership knows that better than anyone watching from the outside. What makes NVIDIA's rise remarkable isn't just the size of the company it became. It's the decades of invisible preparation that came before the world noticed. A napkin sketch in a diner. A gaming chip nobody thought mattered outside entertainment. A software platform investors called a waste of money. Each decision, made years too early to make sense to anyone but Jensen Huang, eventually aligned into something that reshaped the global economy. The world didn't hand NVIDIA the future. NVIDIA spent 30 years quietly building it, waiting for everyone else to catch up.